Hello, hello. We are live. Hello, Loving Without Boundaries community. We are excited to be here with another amazing topic that we think will serve you and help you live your best life, your most authentic life, even if you are coloring outside the lines of heteronormative monogamy. And if you are new to our private online community, we want to say welcome, and we are glad that you are here. So remember, there are some guidelines to be a part of this community, so you might want to check those out if you are new. They are listed under the files tab as well as on the right hand side, just making sure that you understand what our guidelines are to be a part of our community that is growing exponentially, especially over the last few years. So we are honored to be here with you, and I am here with B, who is part of our team. She is one of our mindset coaches. She is amazing. And we are going to be talking about needs-based communication and what happens when we don't have the skills to be able to give voice to our needs in healthy ways. So I'd love it, B, if maybe you start us off just introducing us to this topic, and we'll have a lively conversation here.
Yes, absolutely. Hello, everyone who's watching either live or the recording. Today's topic is needs-based communication, and why I thought, or we thought, that this could be an important topic to bring here today, because it is something that is crucial for healthy and happy relationships and navigating the daily complexities of consensual non-monogamy. We also want to normalize that it's okay to not have certain skills at any point in time in our lives. What matters is that once we notice that we lack certain skill set, we step into a solution-oriented mode and acquire certain skills. So I want to encourage everyone to not feel shame around or guilt around if you not have mastered how needs-based communication, or how we also call it like empathy-based communication, nonviolent communication, looks like. It is simply a skill that can be learned, and with practice we can condition it to really become of who we are. So with nonviolent communication, this is one of the most common growth edges that we see in people, or this is one of the most common growth edges that any of us can have, because we are not specifically taught throughout our lifespan how to have needs-based conversations, and very often we are not modeled healthy ways in the environment that we grew up. So there's absolutely no shaming around that if one doesn't have that particular skill. I want to say that needs-based communication is not necessarily an easy task. So being either on the receiving end or being someone who aims to communicate on a needs-based level can be one of the scariest and most triggering places to be. But with any type of behavior that we either do or don't do, we really want to think of the consequences as well. So we can't really deepen understanding, navigate differences, or make amends in a healthy way for everyone involved if we don't have a particular skill set when it comes to our communications. And needs-based communications is one of the tools that can help build bridges between people, let it be a romantic relationship or friendship or family, or, for example, at the workplace. So this is a really important topic, and a super powerful skill to learn.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for introducing the topic and giving us the breadth of what we're talking about here from like a 30,000 foot level. I really appreciate you, B. So just to expand on that a little bit more, we find so often that when people come to us, sometimes they are arguing with their partners, sometimes daily, sometimes there is tension in their relationships or in their home, like harmony has gone away in their households. And what we find is a lot of times it's simply because they are communicating in aggressive, sometimes even disrespectful ways with each other, damaging their relationships, whether that's by criticizing or judging their partner. We often say judging is a tragic expression of our needs. tragic because it almost guarantees that we're not going to get our own needs met. And there's an interesting statistic that in the average household, there are typically 14 criticisms or judgments to only one kind and more of an appreciation statement. So what we're talking about is learning the skills to be able to flip that. And we'll be talking about that in a little bit. But what we see so often when people come to us is they are steeped in what are sometimes called the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So that's criticism, showing up with contempt, or also stonewalling their partner, refusing to talk about anything, or also showing up with defensiveness. That's what sometimes can show up after we feel attacked or blamed by our partner. So this is very corrosive to relationships, and it erodes trust over time. And we see this so often when people are reaching out to us, which is exactly why we wanted to talk about this topic today. So I'd love it, B, if you could keep walking this out for people about how this can show up.
Yeah, absolutely. There can be really serious consequences of not being in touch with our own needs and not have the skill set how to communicate our needs in an empathetic way. So I would love to extend on what you talked about, Kitty, for example, the blaming and the judgment and the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So how this can show up in relationships, just to drill a little bit deeper, is so one of the farthest ways that we can end up from needs-based communication is when we go to a place where we judge or we blame. So when we enter into judgments, we externalize our pain, and that's true for blame as well. And our beautiful needs can become so complex and covered with so many disempowering beliefs that, for example, just the simple need to connect, to have a loving relationship is going to show up at the judgment level, like I can't trust anyone, and all people are shallow. And when we communicate from that place with someone else, that's gonna put other people on the defensive, and they're gonna get confused. They're not gonna understand our beautiful need underneath. And when we blame, we can end up in a really painful cycle as well, because we blame someone else and then they blame us back. And now our relationship is less about having constructive conversations and building trust in the relationship, and becomes more about suiting our pain individually. We can end up at the other end of the spectrum. Instead of the judgment outside, so externalized judgment or blame, we can also turn all of it inward and feel that we are 100% responsible for everything, like everything is my fault. So that's another type of distortion, that I am to blame for everything. And it's important to remember that in any type of dynamic, it takes two people to create that particular dynamic. So we 50% are responsible for any type of dynamic. So it's not a constructive way of coming together if we either end up externalizing our pain or internalizing it, like making everything to be our fault. And when we're on the field of battle in this particular way, we miss out on empathetic connection with other people. We are not able to see them at the needs level. And we may also lack the ability in the moment to be empathetic with ourselves. We may end up judging our own needs, like there's something wrong with me. I'm a bad person for having that need, that I would like to connect. I like to feel significant. I like to feel seen. So that judgment can turn inwards as well, and these can be really, really, really painful places to be in a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Go ahead. I'll add on to that, but thank you for everything that you shared there so beautifully, just walking that out. And just to underscore some of what B was saying, when we go to these places, it can also trigger us, meaning we can go into the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode. So of course the fight we've been kind of addressing, like if we start getting into a battle, getting what we call the field of battle with our partner, we could also go into the flight mode where we just kind of shut down, and then we can't get any resolution if we're not able to know how to communicate in healthy ways. And B also touched on it. We can go into that fawn place where we're just going to not have any boundaries and just start people pleasing because we're avoiding the conflict altogether. And so we just kind of lay down and put our needs aside and start overcompensating for whatever's happening. And so can be like very self-sabotaging for an individual, chipping away at your sense of self-respect and self-worth. So that's not sustainable. And it can also be damaging to the relationship, like we were talking about, eroding trust. And we're not then showing up assuming goodwill of our partner. Then we start to assume negative intentions from our partner and maybe projecting that onto them. And then another thing that Bea and I were talking about before we started doing this is when we can show up with having unrealistic expectations of others so that's another way that how can we look at ourselves and come from a place of personal responsibility? Like Bea was talking about, there's typically two people, right? So that 50% of what's going on is typically one person and 50% is ourselves. So having unrealistic expectations of others is part of our side of the street. And some of the consequences of that is it can start to fuel resentment. Resentment can be a relationship killer. And it can also fuel the feeling of powerlessness in getting our needs met. We're kind of looking outside of ourselves to get our needs met instead of remembering that we are empowered to figure that out. And it also can be enabling poor behavior by over accommodating the needs of others. That's kind of that fawning that we were talking about, and also having poor boundaries when we're taking on too much responsibility for other people's feelings or their actions, like Bea was referencing when we start not having empathy for ourselves, but it's still our behavior in terms of how we're showing up. Because if we're going into rescuer mode, that's on us. Like we need to understand how to have healthy boundaries. And that can show up of the type of thinking that if I just did enough for you, well, then you will make me feel better. Or if I just did enough, then I will not have these feelings of powerlessness and resentment or fear or anxiety or shame or guilt or whatever it is for you that's showing up. I'd love it, Bea, if you started to walk that out a little bit more of what can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to stack on what you shared so far, that it can erode self-trust as well and trust in others if we're not in touch with our own needs, and if we can't communicate in a empathetic, healthy way. When we go into that fawn response or over-accommodate other people's needs as well, like in a very destructive way, and suppress our own needs, we may not notice how we contribute to that dynamic, what you just talked about, Katie, and we may feel that our resentment is completely justified, and we are really being taken advantage of, and we miss out on that point that actually we are the source of it. So we definitely contribute to that typical dynamic in 50%, because we allow something to happen, enable that poor behavior, or enable that over accommodation to happen. There can be other ways as well that the being out of touch with our needs can show up, and it's a fearful place to be when we have the tendency to take others people's actions personally. We may end up at this hypervigilant place where we keep looking for danger, not necessarily intentionally, but this is our baseline, that we look for danger cues from everyone, and make our own interpretation, make our own assumptions, and scary stories about what other people's actions and emotion might mean about ourselves, or how this is gonna end up in me having lost less and never. And from this place, if I'm not in touch with my need and I don't know the constructive way of communicating about that, we run the risk that we may take our scary stories as these are facts. So we treat these, and this is actually the fact, and there's nothing that I can do about it. Mm-hmm. So without fact checking, we go into that downward spiral that's not gonna keep building bridges with other people. Mm-hmm. Also, another destructive way that the lack of needs-based communication can represent itself is needing to be right. I come from a place that I have that need, that I want to be right, I must be right, and that can show up at the level of destructive behaviors, destructive communication, for example, making demands. accusations, criticism, aggression, stonewalling, withdrawing, and also it can look like the inability to apologize because I consider it as a personal failure because I keep judging myself for my needs. So it's just further gets us down on the downward spiral. And from this place, we won't be able to build bridges with others. And actually, sadly, our needs won't get met if we enter into these destructive ways of communications.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to touch on something else. When sometimes we can become our own worst enemy, and again, without even us noticing that, so not coming from a conscious place, where we may create disempowering beliefs that can look like an essentialist point of view of life and people. So like it's in their DNA. They just like wired like that. They are raised like that. They are just this type of person. And if we look at the world through these lenses, then we actually give up before we even try. We give up on creating our own agency around change, and we may lose hope that actually we may be able to see any type of change in the world, and that can be a really painful place to be. And instead of us being partners in crime, we just keep ending up in a cycle where we are victims in crime together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I really want to highlight some of what you shared there, B, because it was so important. That concept of if we get into black and white thinking, like you were talking about, like it's only either this way or this way, like you said, it can really cause us to feel disempowered and go into that victim mindset. And another way that we sometimes talk about it is making assumptions, meaning we assume that whatever's happened in the past is just going to keep happening over and over again. But when we do that, it's a very limited view of what's possible in our lives. And it's also not very kind, honestly, to the people in our lives, because we may be assuming that they can't or they won't change, or that they aren't going to show up the way we need them to show up in our relationship, which isn't a very kind thing to do. And it's kind of the opposite of what we were talking about earlier, of assuming goodwill in our relationships. And that's partly what helps build a foundation in a healthy relationship. And I also want to underscore what you said about that needing to be right. Well, a lot of times when we're working with our clients, we're helping them ask better questions. So I put it in the comments there, that question: do I want to be right, or do I want to connect? Do I want to build bridges? Do I want to show up with empathy and compassion? And that's another way that it kind of overlaps with the four horsemen of the apocalypse. When we're in those behaviors of criticism, of defensiveness, that's in that world of I need to be right. And when we do that, we're showing up in ways that can land as attacks or feel disrespectful to our partner, instead of learning how to show up with appreciation, with empathy, wanting to understand the other person's perspective, believing them when they tell you what they actually are thinking and feeling, instead of projecting on them what we assume they're thinking and feeling, which may be disempowering and destructive to the relationship. So I just want to honor you again, B, for bringing up this important topic. And we always like to make sure we don't want this to feel like doom and gloom. We just want to talk about the consequences of when you don't get the right skill set, you don't have the right mentor in your corner or the right coach. So if any of this is resonating with you, we invite you to feel free to type in the chat, even if you're watching the recording. We want to see if this is helpful to you. And we want you to know that there are ways through this. You can learn how to build out your skills, get different strategies and techniques. It's just like going to the gym. If you're going to build a new set of skills, well, you need to be consistent about it, and you've got to go lift the weight, but you also need to know what to do and have a proven step-by-step plan on how to do that. And very often we might give up if we don't have the right coach or mentor who's there right alongside you going, you can do this. I believe in you. Let me help you understand what's getting in the way so that we can move that block out of the way. what I love to say sometimes is if you're inside the jar, right, you can't read the outside label. So sometimes having a mentor or a coach or a third party to illustrate to you, here's the blind spots that you're not able to see, they can accelerate and compress time so that you get the skills that you need and build them over time. So you can learn to embrace becoming really proactive of your experience and the creator of your own life, and realize that life is happening for you and from you. You are creating it instead of more of that victim mentality of life is happening to me, which is very disempowering. And it's completely possible to get intimately connected with your beautiful needs, which are always life affirming, positive, and beautiful. So our needs are never in conflict. It's oftentimes our strategies that we are employing to attempt to get our needs met that could be in conflict. And that's exactly what we help people to do, to understand that incredible distinction, as well as giving you highly advanced communication tools. We work with something called embodied nonviolent communication, which is a step above regular nonviolent communication, to help you understand how to give voice to your needs so that you are building trust or rebuilding trust. If there has been infidelity, you're also building connection. And as B loves to say, building bridges in your relationship so that there's more empathy. These are all muscles that you can build. Anything that you'd like to add on there, B?
Yes, absolutely. I love that you highlighted, Kiri, that there's a skill set can get us into a field of understanding inside of ourselves and in our relationships as well. So we often keep mentioning that the transformation happens in the specific, not the general. So the basis of needs-based communication is to get in touch with our own needs first. So cultivating that self-awareness, and that's a skill. There are steps, there are these really powerful solution-oriented questions that you mentioned, Kitty, that can get us into our heart space and get connected with our needs, away from shame and guilt and blame. And there are ways to become an observer of our experience and observer of other people's experience as well, when we witness, support, accept, and are present. So we all have these beautiful needs. This is part of the human experience, that we want to feel seen, heard, that we want to connect, we want to feel respected, acknowledged, and supported. And there are absolutely the skills that can help us communicate our beautiful needs in an empowered way. And there are these skills that can help us step into those vulnerable places that can feel scary sometimes, where we can really open our hearts up to beautiful, intimate, and deep relationship with others.
That was so heartfelt and sincere the way you said that. So thank you so much, B. And if anything that we're saying here is resonating with you, if you have been having lots of those same old arguments with your partners, if you are dealing with poor boundaries that you realize that you need to work on, if you are dealing with insecurities or low self-worth or jealousy in your relationships, and also if you're just dealing with different types of emotional pain, and you know that there are skills that you need to live your most authentic life when you are coloring outside of the lines of heteronormative monogamy, I invite you to book a free breakthrough session with myself and my team. You can go to this link that I just put up on the screen, which is lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. This is what B did over 2 years ago. It's like 2.5 years now, B, where she simply booked a call and raised her hand and said, hey, I need some help. I really need some expert strategies and some guidance on how to live my most authentic life and stop some of the pain that she was experiencing in her own life. And it was a journey, right? It didn't happen overnight. She didn't just like take one pill and wake up the next day and she was better. Not at all. She had to put in the work. She had to learn what to do, with me laying out step by step exactly where she needed to be shining the spotlight, and then hold her hand as she was learning these skills and cheering her on and giving her the encouragement and the support, and also the skill set, knowing that she was empowered to create positive change and literally rebuild her life in a lot of ways. So if B can do it, so can you. And so if that's you, if you're looking for help, I invite you to simply go to lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. That'll take you into my calendar. You just pick a time slot that works for you. There'll be a very brief form for you to fill out that just sets us up for success on that call. And then we're just going to have an authentic and honest and beautiful conversation to lay out a game plan and put our heads together to see what makes sense for you. So know that myself and my team are here for you. We're happy that you are here in our Loving Without Boundaries community. We love you and we want to support you in living your best life now, not months from now, not years from now. Why not start living your best life right now? So anything else you'd like to stack on that, B?
Yes, absolutely. So the amazing benefit of the many skills that you just mentioned, Kiri, including the needs-based communication, the boundary setting, the creating self-awareness can be that we actually gain so much understanding of ourselves and also how other people operate and can feel so empowered with this case. And I love this word empowered because that's how I've been feeling since I first made that quote, which was the best quote of my life.
Oh, that's amazing.
So the amazing benefit can be that actually we notice that we can be the source of our own abundance, that we can fill up our own cup, and we can notice that actually the needs that we thought that can only be met by other people, we can start meeting ourselves, building that trust and safety with each other. And from that place, we're going to show up entirely differently with our life and in our relationship. So it can end up with a really, really beautiful result if we are willing to put in the work, for sure.
So beautiful, B. And just like B said, it all started with her simply booking that first call with me, that what we call a breakthrough session. A lot of people have huge insights and realizations on just that first call alone. And then we can see if this is the right journey for you to embark on, getting a proven step-by-step plan and a system to help you get from where you are now to where you want to be. But we can't do that if we don't have an honest conversation. So with that, we just want to say that we love you. We're glad that you are here. We are honored to have you as part of our community. And if you are seeking help, feel free to book that call and also enjoy all the different resources and sense of community, knowing that you are not alone by being part of our Loving Without Boundaries community. We are glad that you are here. So with that, have a great rest of your day and we'll talk to you soon.